Hello, and welcome to another Seth stream where we will continue analyzing The Nature of Personal Reality by Jane Roberts. I'm Poetic Heretic, and as always, if you're watching when this is not live, you may fast forward until 5 minutes in, where we will begin with the main part of the material. While in the meantime, I continue setting everything up. Can't really tell if I like this angle or not, but I guess we'll go with it. Okay, how do we sound? All right, good. So this should be a rather enjoyable night. I look forward to seeing what Seth gets into on this night. And again, I think I like this angle. I don't know. Whatever, we're going with it. All right, tweet looks good. Hello, Ryan. Welcome to the stream. So now we're just gonna get this thing opened up. And okay, I guess I opened it up before. And all right, just another minute and a half to go. Got off work by a decent time. That's good to hear. I would have gotten up at a decent time myself today and tonight, but I needed some extra rest, so I gave it to myself. I can always tell when I'm pushing my body too hard and need to back off. And that's exactly what I felt last night. So I was like, I need to let myself sleep in today. And so I did. Of course, for me, sleep in can take on many different meanings depending on the circumstances, but whatever. All right, we will be beginning very soon. Make sure I'm as close to the microphone as I can comfortably be for audio quality. Don't know if I really moved at all, but anyway. Okay, we are now 5 minutes in, so let us officially begin. So again, I'm Poetic Heretic, and we are analyzing The Nature of Personal Reality by Jane Roberts tonight. We are on chapter 14, and just as a reminder, as usual, to people out there watching, this is mostly my reading the book, but also commenting on the book. This is not a stream where we just read the book the whole time. If you're looking for that, look elsewhere. This is meant to be an analysis and hopefully a discussion of the material. And also, as I often like to remind people, just because we're analyzing a book here on stream does not mean that we or that I automatically agree with everything in it. That's why it's called analyzing it, not let's read this book and believe everything in it. But anyway, I just want to throw that out there as usual. So without further ado, let us begin. Chapter 14. Which you, which world, your daily reality as the expression of specific probable events. Jane had no idea of what Chapter 14 would be about. Quote, I'm just waiting. At 9:51, she said, in fact, I haven't the slightest idea in my head about Seth or anything else. We continued to wait. It had begun to rain gently. Traffic seemed to hiss upon the pavement. We heard a television set sounding off in one of the downstairs apartments, though not loudly. Resume, finally, at 10:01. Dictation. Chapter 14. Which you? Beneath that, gesturing horizontally, which world? Parentheses. In trance, her eyes closed, Jane sat quite still for well over a minute. Continuing with the heading, your daily reality as the expression of specific probable events. That is all the heading. A long pause at 10:06. The brain can be called simply the physical counterpart of the mind. By means of the brain, the functions of the soul and intellect are connected with the body. Through the characteristics of the brain, events that are of non-physical origin become physically valid. There is a definite filtering and focusing effect at work, then. Practically speaking, you do indeed form the appearance that reality takes through your conscious beliefs. Those beliefs are used underlined as screening and directing agents, separating certain non-physical probable events from others, and bringing them into three-dimensional actuality. Other probable events could just as well become physically experienced ones. Those beliefs about yourself form your own self-image and define your concepts of what is possible or not possible for you. You will choose from those non-physical probable events, therefore, only those you feel you are in accord with. Because of your psychological and psychic structure, there is within the rich makeup of your being a literally endless variety of what you may call probable selves. In one reality or another, these will all be experienced. In your present existence, however, you will utilize only those psychological characteristics that you underlined believe you possess. So, you see, the personality cannot be defined as being thus and so. The physical constitution of the body follows your beliefs, and so all of its sense data will faithfully mirror the beliefs that direct its activity. In certain terms, hypnosis is simply an exercise in the alteration of beliefs, and only too clearly shows that sense experience follows expectations. The quote-unquote you that you presently conceive yourself to be represents the emergence into physical experience of but one probable state of your being, who then directs corporeal life and quote-unquote frames and defines all sense data. When your ideas about yourself change, so does your experience. Even the intimate body experience alters. You may say that you are you, but underlined which you are you. In the most personal terms, each individual creates his own world. The biological equipment of your creaturehood directs your mass experience enough so that agreement is reached, but only along certain general lines. Pause at 10:27. The overall private experience that you perceive forms your world, period. But underlined which world do you inhabit? For if you altered your beliefs and therefore your private sensations of reality, then that world, seemingly the only one, would also change. You do go through transformations of beliefs all the time, and your perception of the world is different. You seem to be no longer the person that you were. You are quite correct. You are underlined not the person that you were, and your world underlined has changed, and not just symbolically. Often you fall into lapses in which you actually pull in your consciousness, so to speak, and experience life in a lesser fashion. In such a state, you do not seem to experience yourself directly, and indeed, in the midst of what you think of as the waking state, you act in the most mechanical of fashions, following habit and being less aware of sensual stimuli. On such occasions, your beliefs usually lose their edge. The directions you give to your body are not clear, and the world around seems fuzzy. This is often a time of deep unconscious activity, when new latent probable characteristics are biding their time, so to speak, waiting for emergence. You may take your break. 1037 to 1055. In your terms, probable events are brought into actuality by utilizing the body's nerve structure through certain intensities of will or conscious belief. These beliefs obviously have another reality beside the one with which you are familiar. They attract and bring into being certain events instead of others. Therefore, they determine the underlined entry of experienced events from an endless variety of probable ones. You seem to be at the center of your world, because for you, your world begins with that point of intersection where soul and physical consciousness meet. Long pause at 11:04. Give us time. Give me time for a sip of water. In surface terms, the sense of quote-unquote I that you possess is the result of constantly emerging probable identities, given continuity and time through the physical apparatus of the body with its built-in intervals of nerve reaction. You only underline remember the portion of your identity that is physically realized, those portions that are drawn into corporeal pattern, parentheses, with gestures and forcefully. This is the result of the focusing and yet limiting behavior of the physical brain, for effective survival behavior in your reality depends upon time reactions. The nerve pattern's activity therefore causes the illusion of a present, in which your consciousness appears focused and alert. In certain terms, quote-unquote future events exist now, but they are too fast. They jump over the nerve endings too quickly, and physically you cannot perceive or experience them as yet. Impulses possess a far different reality than physicists or biologists suppose. As underlined, you think now, quote-unquote past is still occurring. The quote-unquote drag still leaps the synapses, but again, is not physically recorded. Past events continue. Consciously, you only experience portions of events with your corporeal structure, yet the underlined structure itself records them. In such a way, the cells retain their memory, though underlined you do not perceive it, and the body is aware of so-called future occurrences, though as a rule you do not consciously sense this. Parentheses, suddenly very intense and fast. At underlined other levels of psychic activity, however, such knowledge is also available to you, but only when you disconnect your experience from the time-activated neuronal structure. And this you can do through various alterations of consciousness, often quite spontaneously adopted. Many such states can give you a far greater direct experience with the nature of your non-corporeal reality than any underlined normally conscious questioning. Which you? Which world? You can to some extent discover for yourself the other probable yous that are a portion of your being. Take your break. 11:20. Jane said that while in trance she hadn't been aware that her delivery had been slow at times, yet she seemed to recall these fluctuations when I asked her about them. She thought Seth was, quote, trying to couch the stuff in terms that would make sense to someone who didn't know much about such things, while keeping it of interest to a physicist, say, which wasn't easy to do. There was a lot more about synapses and neurons and things like that he didn't put in, end quote. The junction between two nerve cells, or neurons, is called a synapse. Brackets, see the 637th session in Chapter 9. Jane is receiving more letters from scientists these days, many of whom ask intriguing questions about the type of material covered in this session. Resume in a faster manner at 11:45. Now, future events are also your selection of probable ones, however, and many occurrences in which you are involved speed past you too quickly for your neuronal structure. These are not served up to you as your present. They represent your experience on other physical levels. My dear friend Rupert, parentheses, briefly louder, has to some extent given an analogy of this in the first Oversoul 7 book, a novel. You perceive a certain event as present. Your beliefs give it entry through the nerve synapses and attract it. It then seems to become the past. You have only tuned into a portion of it physically, though. That past event continues to exist with its own quote-unquote future, which you may or may not perceive, according to which probable action underlined you pull into your next experiences of actuality. The past underlined does have its own past, present, and future, therefore. From a given past event, you will only materialize a particular future, but the event itself continues and possesses a dimensionality of its own, or rather a underlined multi-dimensionality that you also possess. You can dip into cellular memory, for example. Using memory, you follow but one recognized sequence of remembered events backward. There are elements in your past that are as unpredictable, however, as the elements in your future now appear to be, emphatically. There is creativity in your past waiting for you even as there is in your future, but to utilize such experiences, you must learn to alter your beliefs, and to some degree, escape from the particular kind of limited conscious focus that you habitually use. Now, we can continue the session, parentheses, quote, go ahead, end quote, or end it as you prefer. If you continue, take a brief break. Some of these sessions can go on for longer periods of time. 11:55. Didn't I just get a break? Jane asked, puzzled. I explained the situation to her. These sessions don't often work this way. Resume at 12:05. Hello, Lumen. Welcome to the stream. So far, I don't really have any comments on what Seth is saying. As usual, his statements are so thorough, I just kind of don't really have anything to add. So let's continue. Now give us a moment. The physical structure itself contains within it the necessary prerequisites for what you would call evolutions of consciousness, and even for, within certain limits, the organization of experience in ways that might seem quite alien to you now. Sense data underlined can be organized in different fashions. Mechanisms and pathways exist, making it quite possible for you to underlined see, sound, or hear color, although that is not your primary habit at this time. Pause. In certain terms, time intervals are jumped, as when a quote-unquote past smell or sight is suddenly perceived with present vividness, though you would say it has hardly occurred in the past. Under particular conditions, a memory may suddenly become more real than the event of the present moment, and so rush again into your current experience as validly as when it was first lived, and even seem to blot out the occurrences of the moment. This could not happen if your physical structure did not have built-in mechanisms allowing it to, and if under certain conditions the normal intervals between the synapses of the nerve cells could not be leaped in a different fashion. In the same way, a future experience may also be physically perceived in your present. Now, beneath your usual consciousness, your physical organism can react to future events without your knowledge, as it can to past ones. In such cases, the intensity of the initially non-physical event is enough to break through normal neuronal patterns. If you are aware of such a future episode, you will be forced to react to it as a conscious being. In any case, your temporal structure will respond whether or not you are aware of the reasons for such behavior. The future incident may then occur in its time sequence, and you recognize it through memory, in which case your reactions in that future present will be altered because of the seemingly past memory. In your terms, that event may never come to pass, however, because it may be arising from a probable past that was once your present, but from which you have diverged. This is one of the reasons why psychics' predictions often do not seem to bear out, for at every point you do indeed have the free will, through your beliefs, to alter your experience. Your beliefs form the pivot of your present experience. Now, end of dictation, a few remarks. Parentheses 12:20. Seth now delivered 2 pages of material for Jane and me, and the session ended at 12:37 a.m. Those who are interested in probabilities can also see chapters 15, 16, and 17 in Seth Speaks. All right, so that concludes that session. And indeed, if you want to see chapters 15, 16, and 17 in Seth Speaks, they are up on my channel, the previous Seth book that we looked at. So you could either scroll through my uploads or even just search YouTube for Poetic v. Heretic, Seth Speaks, chapters 15, 16, 17, or just 15 or 16 or whatever. And it'll most likely come up. I think that's interesting also there how Seth pointed out that we always have free will. And even when dealing with psychics and their predictions, that's the case. And that's something I always remind people when I'm giving tarot readings or presenting astrology or whatever. But so yeah, I don't consider myself a psychic or anything. In fact, I think that idea is quite comical. Just because I read tarot cards and understand astrology that I'm a quote unquote psychic. I just find that really funny because I'm not, I don't know, to me, like a psychic, I don't know, I'm not like tapping into someone's vibration intuitively and sort of predicting probabilities based on that alone. I just know how to read tarot cards and astrology. And yes, I use my intuition through that, but I don't know. To me, it's just almost comical to say that I would be a psychic. But, you know, if people want to consider me that, I can understand that. It's like I'm not really using any psychic powers. I just know how to read cards and astrology. You know, anyone could do it as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, let us continue. Session 654, April 9th, 1973, 9:45 p.m. Monday. Now, good evening and dictation. 9:45 p.m. Well, that's weird. It's almost 8:45 here, and we're about to have the clocks move forward, in which case it would be 9:45 p.m. Weird. Anyway, like in the present, that is. Now, good evening and dictation. Good evening, Seth. In your terms, practically speaking, probable events seem to make more sense when you think of them as latent future ones. The fact remains that there are probable past events that, quote unquote, can still happen within your personal previous experience. A new event can literally be born in the past, quote unquote, now. On a grand scale, underlined, this rarely occurs in such a way that you perceive it. And you had better underline that whole last part. So indeed, the part that is underlined reads again thus. This rarely occurs in such a way that you perceive it. So there you go. A new belief in the present, however, can cause changes in the past on a neuronal level. You must understand that basically time is simultaneous. Present beliefs can indeed alter the past. In some cases of healing, in the spontaneous disappearance of cancer, for instance, or of any other disease, certain alterations are made that affect cellular memory, genetic codes, or neuronal patterns in the past. In such instances, there is, as easily as I can explain it, a reaching into deep biological structures as they existed at one time. At that point, the probabilities are altered, in the condition erased in your present, but also in your past. Pause at 10:01. A sudden or intense belief in health can indeed, quote unquote, reverse a disease, but in a very practical way, underlined, it is a reversal in terms of time. New memories are inserted in place of the old ones, as far as cells are concerned under such conditions. This kind of therapy happens quite frequently on a spontaneous basis when people rid themselves of diseases they do not even know they possess. Learning is not simply passed on from living tissue to living tissue. This your biologists have discovered, but it is also passed on through the body's present corporeal reality, sometimes entirely changing the messages to past cells that in your terms no longer exist. In somewhat the same way, a strong belief in a particular ability generated in the present will reach into the past and affect whatever changes would have had to occur underlined there, parentheses, with gestures, in order to now make the ability apparent. This is the reason for the results of some experiments being conducted abroad in which accelerated learning takes place when under hypnosis or otherwise a present individual is convinced that he or she is, for example, a great painter or a linguist. The present belief activates quote-unquote latent abilities within each person. Footnote. Seth seems to refer to quote-unquote artificial reincarnation as practiced by the Soviets. See Sheila Ostrander and Lynn Schroeder's Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain, parentheses, Banston Books, end of footnote. Pause. The biological structure underlined as it existed in the past is therefore affected. Experience is built into the organism that it did not have before, in your terms. It is a sort of reprogramming. It is impossible, of course, for you to examine cellular structure underlined now as it exists underlined in the present underlined and simultaneously as it existed in the past, very positively. So I'll read that again for clarity. It is impossible, of course, for you to examine cellular structure now as it exists in the present and simultaneously as it existed in the past, very positively. So what Seth is basically saying here, and this is sort of an oversimplification, but he's saying that changes that take place in the present are literally affecting the past. They're affecting what we think of as the past. Seth's thesis is that the past is not a static, linear series of events as we remember it to be, but is in reality as open and ever-changing as what we believe the present to be. That's his thesis, and I think it's a very interesting one. Scientifically, you can only probe those effects that appear within your present. When you alter your beliefs today, you also reprogram your past. Underlined, as far as you are concerned, the present is your point of action, focus, and power. And from that point of volition, you form both your future and your past. Realizing this, you will understand that you are not at the mercy of a past over which you have no control. Take your break. 10:20. Quote, Seth was doing it slow so that I got it right, Jane said. The biologist won't accept that, though. Pretty tricky. End quote. Resume in the same manner at 10:35. And that's another recurring theme of Seth's philosophy is this idea that we are not at the mercy of a past over which we have no control. And I very much agree with him. One way or another, it is, and I would say regardless of what you believe, it is inaccurate to believe that we have absolute no power over the past, whether you want to accept the idea that it changes or not. You know, we're not powerless. We're not powerless before a past. You know, we're not powerless before our own personal past, nor the past in general. There's always something we can do. While your present conscious beliefs dictate your current experience, and while your physical body wears its solidity only in present time to your senses, beneath this, both the ever-changing elements of your body and your consciousness are relatively underlined free in time. They exist in a multidimensionality with which rational consciousness is not yet equipped to deal. This is not meant to dilute the function or natural abilities of reasoning awareness, for its powers allow you to focus experience in a highly specific manner, and to direct energy with great purposeful attention. Pause. In your terms, this action is in the process of automatically changing the nature of rational consciousness, which is, as you think of it, in a state of evolution. Your consciousness is not a thing that you possess. Your individuality is not a thing with limits. So if you ask, What is my individuality in all of this? Or which I am I? Then you are automatically thinking of yourself as a psychological entity with definite boundaries that must be protected at all costs. You may say, I was born in a house on a certain street in a certain town, and no present belief to the contrary will change that fact. If in the present, underlined one past event can be altered within your neuronal structure, however, then basically no event is safe from such change. In your practical experience, tables remain tables, although physicists well know that physical appearance is in some ways a mirage. At your level of experience, many effects are accepted and used quite practically, as are your solid tables. You do not perceive the atoms or molecules that compose them, so in the same way, but in a different manner of speaking, events seem quote-unquote solid as tables do. Yet at other levels, this seeming solidity of events also breaks down. Which you, which world? A sudden contemporary belief in illness will actually reach back into the past, affecting the organism at that level, and inserting into the past experience of the cells the initiation of those biological events that will then seem to give birth to a present disease. In the current pivoting of its experience, therefore, your conscious mind directs not only the present, but future and past experience of deep neurological events. Long pause at 10:59. Give us time. Cellular memory can be changed at any point. Present beliefs can insert into the past new memory, both psychologically and physically. The future is in no way predetermined on underlined basic levels. This does not mean that the future cannot be predicted sometimes, for in practical terms, you will often continue with certain lines of probability which can be seen, quote-unquote, ahead of time. Such predictions can affect the probabilities, of course, and reinforce a present line of belief. Physicians often wonder whether they should tell terminal patients of their impending deaths. There is great controversy. In some cases, such a prediction can make death a fact, while its opposite, underlined can, regenerate the patient's belief in his or her own ability to live. No man will die simply because a physician tells him he is going to, however. No one is so at the mercy of another's beliefs. Each individual, generally speaking, knows his challenges and underlined overall programs and the time of his death. But even such decisions can be altered at any time in your quote-unquote now. The entire body can be regenerated in a way that would be impossible to predict in usual medical terms. See the 624th session in Chapter 5. You rule your experiences from the focal point of your present, where your beliefs directly intercept with the body and the physical world on the one hand, and the invisible world from which you draw your energy and strength on the other. This applies to individuals, societies, races, and nations, and to sociological, biological, and psychic activities. In daily practical experience, try to concentrate for a while upon seemingly subordinate abilities, ones that you think of as latent. If you do so consistently, using your imagination and will, then those abilities will become prominent in your present. The current beliefs will reprogram and alter past experience. It is not simply that past, forgotten, unconsciously perceived events will be put together in a new way and organized under a new heading, but that, underlined in that past, parentheses, now not perceivable, the entirely bodily response to seemingly past events will change. Parentheses, very forcefully, if with many pauses. Your desire or belief will literally be reaching back into time, teaching the nerves new tricks. Definite reorganizations underlined in that past will occur underlined in your present, allowing you to behave in entirely new fashions. So, just to dig into this material a little more closely, I'm going to do something here as long as we are reading the Kindle edition of this, which allows us to look up words instantly. Let's look up the word latent, a word that Seth likes to use fairly often when talking about these things, and really focus in on this. So it says, latent, adjective, of a quality or state, existing but not yet developed or manifest, hidden, concealed, discovering her latent talent for diplomacy. So again, existing but not yet developed or manifest, hidden, concealed. And so to read some of that again, the way Seth put it, he's like, in daily practical experience, try to concentrate for a while upon seemingly subordinate abilities, ones that you think of as latent. If you do so consistently, using your imagination and will, then those abilities will become prominent in your present. The current beliefs will reprogram and alter past experience. It is not simply that past, forgotten, unconsciously perceived events will be put together in a new way and organized under a new heading, but that underlined in that past, now not perceivable, the entire bodily response to seemingly past events will change. Your desire or belief will literally be reaching back into time, teaching the nerves new tricks. Definite reorganizations underlined in that past will occur underlined in your present, allowing you to behave in entirely new fashions. A 1-minute pause at 11:21. Learned behavior, therefore, alters not only present and future, but also past conduct. Your power as a rational consciousness focused in the present provides you with opportunities for creativity that you are but vaguely learning to understand. As you underlined do learn, you will automatically begin to appreciate the multidimensional nature of not only your own species, but of others as well. The moment as you think of it, then, is the creative framework through which you, the non-physical self, constantly form corporeal reality, and through that window into earthly existence you form both its future and its past. You may take a break. 11:30. Boy, Jane said after she was out of an excellent trance, I had the feeling we were getting some new stuff. I remember thinking, it's great, Seth, but I hope people can read it and follow it. Resume at 11:47. Now, in purely physical terms, what you think of as consciousness of the self arises from a certain peak of intensity reached by the Gestalt consciousness of the atoms and molecules and cells and organs that compose the body. Pause. The peculiarly physically oriented self that you know has its reality in that context, but even in physical terms, its reality is more than any analysis of its entirety would show. It then directs the activity of the body and is to that extent dependent upon neurological activity. The psychic structure of consciousness that organizes that bodily gestalt is, however, not dependent upon it, and so the underlined you that you experience is only a portion of this greater identity. During certain stages in sleep states, you short-circuit the neurological structures and perceive experiences of a multidimensional nature that you then attempt to translate, as best you can, into stimuli that can be physically assimilated. Hence, you often convert these into symbolic images that can be understood, and to some extent reacted to, by your bodily structure. Many times such constructions are used as inner visual patterns, for example. Visually, they often bear a similarity to the inner architecture of the cells and to planets. Your dream images are biologically structured, then. The experiences underlined behind them bring you in contact with the deepest portions of your non-physical reality, and it is the unconscious who translates these for you into recognizable images and forms. In the same way, your unconscious also transforms underlined for you from an otherwise undifferentiated maze of reality, fields of activation into recognizable objects and events in your daily life. You are now rooted in your creaturehood, graced to perceive through your body a unique living experience. So when I mention techniques that will allow you to perceive other fields of reality beside your own, I want you to realize that these should be used to enhance your enjoyment of that creaturehood and to enrich your sensual as well as spiritual expression. In the brilliance of your physical being, both are entwined. End of dictation, 12:05. But not quite at the session. Seth continued with a page of material for Jane and me about our work, so things actually wound up at 12:15 a.m. All right, so that concludes that session. And according to the app, there's just 10 minutes left in this chapter. Session 655, April 11th, 1973, 9:36 p.m., Wednesday. Today, Jane wrote 2 poems, one of them several pages long, that, she said, fit into the scheme of her potential book of poetry, Dialogues of the Speakers. See the notes prefacing the 653rd session for April 4th in Chapter 13, describing how she gave birth to the original long speaker poem while in an altered state of consciousness. Her inspired working environment today contained elements similar to that experience. Good evening, Seth. Dictation. Your neuronal activity structures your conscious experience, then. The overall rhythms of your creaturehood automatically bring you into periods of rest and intense focus. The night and day constitute a framework within which your experience is couched, providing the conscious mind with the needed stimuli and relaxation, and allowing for proper assimilation of events. As mentioned in session 651 through 52 in chapter 13, even then the body construction has built-in mechanisms to alter such an arrangement when further data can be handled. As a rule, you have enough difficulty dealing with the day's occurrences, much less next week's, and so in the sequence of events, the reality of probable actions is usually hidden from your view. Pause. This more complex reality is an ever-existing property of your personal creaturehood. Beside this, in your terms, you exist as a creature more than once. In each of your quote-unquote reincarnational existences, you are faced with the same relationship with probabilities. In each case, also, the nature of the conscious mind sets up its own territory of identity with hyphens. So that's territory of identity that it regards as its own. This provides a clear focus in which quote-unquote present action can be considered. These incarnations are all simultaneous. Long pause at 9:50. A death is but one night to the soul. The vaster entity of which you are part follows your progress as easily as you follow your own through the days. As a rule, most of you wake up in the same bed in the same house or town, but certainly you wake up as the same person in the same century. In those terms, the entity wakes up as a different person underlined each day in a different century, each life seeming like a day in its level of experience. It carries the memory and simultaneous experience of each of those selves. So again, here Seth is referring to what he describes as the greater entity of which we are a part, in which the present life that we are focused and the individuality that we think of as ourselves is just one part of its being, and saying that, like, basically what he seems to be saying here is that our entire lifetime is just like one day or one night perhaps to the greater entity of which we are a part. So in the same way that we wake up and have our own unique days, day after day, the greater entity of which we are a part has its own version of a day after day in a sense, but each day for it is an entire lifetime for us, if that makes sense. A 1-minute pause at 9:55. Give us time. A form is basically non-physical. What you see of form is only that part that can be effectively active or materialized within your system of reality. Underlined, so the entity in its own way possesses what you can think of as future neuronal structures. Underline that whole last sentence. Again, the underlined sentence reads thusly. So the entity in its own way possesses what you can think of as future neuronal structures. Within that vast form is your own, which is briefer, yet is not lost, not limited, and not predetermined. You form your corner of the universe, which is itself a part of another one. Within this, the actions and beliefs of one affect all. Slowly at 10:03. Each part is vital, and in one way or another there is instant communication between the smallest and the largest. the cobweb and the spider, the man, the entity, and the star, and each spins its own web of probabilities from which other universes continually spring. You may take your break, 10:05 to 10:18. Which you, which world? All of this may seem to have little to do with your daily personal experience, and yet it is intimately connected, for personally and en masse you can indeed create, quote unquote, the best of all possible worlds. The performance of a great athlete gives evidence of abilities inherent in the human form that are little used. Great artists, by their very works, demonstrate other attributes latent in the race as a whole. They still represent one-line delineations, however. Within the experience of your race as you know it lie all the patterns that would point to some fully developed human being, in which all inherent tendencies were given full play and came to fruition. You would have an individual who displayed within himself, brackets, or herself, all of those great abilities known to the race, fulfilled according to his own unique temper, the artist, mathematician, athlete, the inventor, all the extraordinary qualities of creaturedom, the emotional realities would be used to their capacity, and any of the racial qualities or characteristics of the species would be given their complete freedom. Wisdom and foolishness would be seen as aspects one of the other. Religion and science would each be unhampered by dogma in such an individual. In the same way, following your own quote-unquote trace experiences and characteristics, you can discover those quote-unquote probable abilities that are yours, and uncover to some degree the nature of probable actions open to you for physical materialization. There are traces in your present experience of your probable selves, even as there are signs in each individual of all the great talents shown and developed so flamboyantly by a few. These traces underlined can be brought into your experience to enrich it. They do so in any case on unconscious levels, where they form the basis form from which you choose your current experience. The next brief chapter will be devoted to methods that will allow you to take advantage of greater options to bring into your daily experience events and experiences that have so far remained quote-unquote latent. In each individual case, the options will be different, of course, yet you can draw into your present life some knowledge and intimate connection with your own probable realities. On a conscious basis, then, you can learn to deepen the dimensions of your life by pulling into it the rich fabric of probabilities. Period. End of chapter and break. All right, so that is the end of chapter 14. Next is chapter 15, which we will get to in a moment, entitled, Which You, Which World, Only You Can Answer, How to Free Yourself from Limitations. All right, and it says it will take an hour to read. So, let's just take a little break. Remember, if anyone has any comments or questions, you can feel free to ask them, and I will do my best to answer. I have read nearly 6 Seth books, so I'm fairly familiar with the material. Some of them I've read multiple times. Let's see. Some bitch disliked the Moon Part 2 stream I did. Well, thanks a lot for that. I really appreciate that. But as usual, left no comment, no constructive criticism. Won't tell me how I can improve at all, which is about what I expected. So you see, my belief is forming into reality. People are often very quick to dislike what I do or what other people do, but hardly, if ever, seem to want to offer any constructive criticism so I can know how can I improve what I'm doing. Just kind of funny, I find that, I must say. All right, so give me just a moment here and we'll continue with chapter 15. Try not to let myself get too fired up or anything though tonight because I'm currently a bit stressed and I don't want to fuck up my health. So let us just continue. Now, I don't know if we'll finish this chapter in this particular stream. We might have to cut it short and continue it in the next part because I'm going to be due for lunch here fairly soon, but we'll see what happens. We might have enough time. Chapter 15. Which you, which world? Only you can answer. How to free yourself from limitations. Now, I will begin the next chapter, or you can have an early session if you prefer. 10:41 to 10:47. No, go ahead. I feel all right, I said, although I was a little tired. Chapter 15. Which you, which world? Only you can answer. How to free yourself from limitations. Give us a moment. Pause. Since your conscious beliefs determine those unconscious functions that bring about your personal experience, your first step is to enlarge those beliefs. The concepts given in this book should have already helped you. The concepts given in this book should have already helped you do that to some extent. Within your own subjective reality are traces of all those roads not taken, those abilities not used. You may think of yourself as primarily a parent, or mainly in terms of your job or profession. As much as possible for now, forget the normal familiar light in which you see yourself and consider your identity. Write down or enumerate all of your known physical and mental abilities, whether they have been developed or not, and all of those inclinations toward particular activities, even those only remotely considered, as well as those that have come at all vividly to mind. These represent the varied probable characteristics from which you have chosen to activate your particular main interest. Out of these attributes, therefore, you chose what you now consider to be your hard-bed reality. 10:59. Any of those directions followed can enrich the existence that you know, and in turn open up other probabilities that now escape you. The main image of yourself that you have held has, to a large extent, also closed your mind to these other probable interests and identifications. If you think in terms of a multidimensional self, then you will realize that you have many more avenues open to expression and fulfillment than you have been using. These probable achievements underlined will lie latent unless you consciously decide to bring them into being. Whatever talents you sense you have can be developed only if you determine to do so. The simple act of decision will then activate the unconscious mechanisms. You, as a personality, regardless of your health, wealth, or circumstances, have a rich variety of probable experience from which to choose. Consciously, you must realize this and seize the direction for your own life. Even if you say, I will go along with all life offers, you are making a conscious decision. If you say, I am powerless to direct my life, you are also making a deliberate choice, and in that case, a limiting one. Pause. The path of experience is nowhere settled. There is no one road that does not have avenues to another. There are deep veins of probable actions ever available to you at any given time. Your imagination can be of great value, allowing you to open yourself to such courses. You can then use it to help you bring these into being. If you are poor, you chose that reality from many probable ones that did, underlined, not involve poverty, and that are still open. If you chose illness, again, there is a probable reality ready for initiation in which you choose health. If you are lonely, there are probable friends you refused to meet in the past, but who are readily available. 11:14. In your mind, therefore, see those probable abilities or events taking place. As you do, the intensity of your desire brings them into your experience. There are no boundaries, again, set about the self. There are literally many other probable yous. You can draw upon their abilities, as in their own way they call upon your own, for you are all intimately connected. You must realize that you are indeed a probable you. Your experience is the result of your beliefs. Your neuronal structure necessitates a certain focus so that other experiences counter to your conscious assumptions remain probable or latent. Alter the beliefs and underlined any probable self can, within certain limitations, be actualized. Now, that is the end of dictation and the end for the evening. Louder, smiling. My heartiest good wishes to you both, and a fond good evening. Good night, Seth. Thank you very much. The abrupt end of the session came then at 11:22 p.m. All right, so that concludes that session. Give me just a very brief moment here, and then we will continue. And so Seth is basically saying that if you find yourself in a state presently that is not to your liking, on the one hand, yes, you did create that, you chose it, even if you chose it at unconscious levels. But on the other hand, the reality where you do not make that choice is still available right here, right now, ready to be initiated. And so you need only change your beliefs in such a way as to create that reality. Right now, I need to create the reality of utilizing some of this stuff. Yeah, I apologize if my voice sounds a bit weak or anything tonight. Again, like I said, I'm a bit stressed currently. I'm having to take it easier because I've been pushing my body too hard. And so, yeah, it's literally, I can literally feel my voice not being as strong as it normally is, even with the help of water. But I've just got to push through it, I guess. Session 656, April 16th, 1973, 9:14 p.m., Monday. Good evening, Seth. With a smile, underlined probable dictation. What you must understand is this. Each of the events in each of your lives was, quote unquote, once, underlined probable. From a given field of action, then you choose those happenings that will be physically materialized. This operates in individual and mass terms. Suppose that today your home was robbed. Yesterday, the theft was one of innumerable probable events. I chose such an example because more than one person would have to be involved, the victim and the robber. Pause. Why was your home ransacked and not your neighbor's? In one way or another, through your conscious thought, you attracted such an event and drew it from probability into actuality. The occurrence would be an accumulation of energy turned into action and be brought about by corollary beliefs. You may be convinced that human nature is evil, or that no one is safe from another's aggression, or that people are motivated mainly by greed. Such beliefs attract their own reality. If you have anything worth losing, you are then automatically convinced that someone else will take it from you, or try their hardest to do so. In your own way, you send out messages to just such a person. On basic levels, your convictions will be quite similar, but one will see himself as the victim and one as the aggressor. That is, each of you will react differently to the same set of beliefs. However, the two of you are necessary if a crime of that nature is or is to be committed. And I want to say something else here, adding to what Seth is saying. So, I've heard people many a time, over the years in various circles or whatever, talk a lot about this idea of greed and say that human nature itself is inherently evil and all this kind of stuff. And to that I say, you can get on that bandwagon a lot with this idea that people are greedy. And yes, there is so much evidence to support it. In fact, it's basically true. And you can argue that. You can say, well, it's true. Shouldn't I believe it if it's true? And to that I say, it may be true, arguably, or maybe it isn't true. I don't know, that humans are greedy, but it doesn't do you any good to focus upon that, to adopt that belief that humans are greedy. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve you or anyone else. It doesn't help you or anyone else to buy into that, to get on that bandwagon of, oh yeah, humans are greedy and blah, blah, blah. In fact, if you're doing that and you're having financial difficulties, that is likely one reason why, because you're literally equating having a lot of money with being bad. So you're literally telling your inner self, your subconscious, whatever you want to call it, that we can't get too much money or we are automatically bad. We are greedy. And so I'm not telling people to not look at reality. I'm just saying, you might want to be careful how much you focus upon stuff like that, And I would also say the only reason that anything that is true is because someone focused upon it long enough to focus it into being and into reality. Now, are there exceptions in which case you should look at reality? Absolutely. Of course there are. Just all I'm saying is just be aware of what you're doing. Just be consciously aware of these different factors involved, You have to exercise caution when addressing anything unwanted, because there does come a point where you're focusing upon it more than for what it's worth. It's like, yes, you have to address problems or challenges in order to meet them. Darkness needs to be transmuted by light, all this stuff. But there does come a point where indeed you focus upon unwanted more than is good for you or anyone else. You have to know where to draw that line, basically. So let us continue. 925. The beliefs of both of you find justification in physical life and only reinforce themselves. The fear of robbers attracts robbers. If you think that men are evil, however, you are often not able to examine that as a belief, but take it as a condition of reality. All of your present experience was drawn from probable reality. During your life, any event must come through your creaturehood, with a built-in time recognition that is so largely a part of your neurological structure. So usually there is a lag, a lapse in time, during which your beliefs cause material actualization. When you try to change your convictions in order to change your experience, you also have to first stop the momentum that you have already built up, so to speak. You are changing the messages while the body is used to reacting smoothly, unquestioningly, to a certain set of beliefs. Wow. That particular paragraph is very important to understand, so much so that I'm actually going to reread it. All of your present experience was drawn from probable reality. During your life, any event must come through your creaturehood, with a built-in time recognition that is so largely a part of your neurological structure. So usually there is a lag, a lapse in time, during which your beliefs cause material actualization. When you try to change your convictions in order to change your experience, you also have to first stop the momentum that you have already built up, so to speak. This is really important about having to stop the momentum. You are changing the messages while the body is used to reacting smoothly, unquestioningly, to a certain set of beliefs. Yes, I can tell you from experience, from working with my own beliefs, changing beliefs, that when you do, it can actually cause some level of stress. It can, because your body, as Seth rightly points out, and also your mind, all parts of you are so used to following a certain rhythm, right? A certain unquestioning assumption of the way things are and of the way you operate in your day-to-day life. So when you go to change your beliefs, suddenly you start to realize, oh, maybe this isn't the case, or this isn't the case, or I should question this, or I should question that. And yes, it can create stress, but that stress is creative and well worth creating. It's well worth it because as the, that's old adage or whatever at this point goes, as the saying goes, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And that's basically accurate. There is a steady, even flow in which conscious activity through the neurological structure brings about events, and a familiar pattern of reaction is established. When you alter these conscious beliefs through effort, then a period of time is necessary while the structure learns to adjust to the new preferred situation. If beliefs are changed overnight, comparatively less time is required. In a manner of speaking, each belief can be seen as a powerful station, pulling to it from fields of probabilities only those signals to which it is attuned. and blocking out all others. When you set up a new station, there may be some static or bleed through from an old one for a while. Any ability you have then can be, quote unquote, brought in more clearly, amplified, and become practical rather than probable. But in such a case, you must concentrate upon the attribute, not, for example, upon the fact that you have not used it well thus far. You may take your break. 9:44 to 10:01. I need some water. You want your own house, Lumen? I want my own house too. So do I. I concur. Now, an artist produces a body of work in his lifetime. Each painting is but one materialization, one focused presentation of an endless variety of underlined probable paintings. The actual work involved in the selection of data is still made according to the beliefs in the artist's conscious mind as to who he is, how good an artist he is, what underlined kind of artist he is, what quote-unquote school of artistic beliefs he subscribes to, his ideas of society and his place in it, and aesthetic and economic values, to name but a few. Long pause. The same sort of thing operates in the actualization of any event in which you are involved. You create your life then. Inner images are of great importance to the artist. He tries to project them upon his canvas or board. Again, you are each your own artist, and your inner visualizations become models for other situations and events. The artist utilizes training and mixes his colors in order to give artistic flesh to his painting. The images in your mind draw to themselves all the proper emotional energy and power needed to fill underlined them out as physical events. You can change the picture of your life at any time if only you realize that it is simply the one portrait of yourself that you have created from an unlimited amount of probable ones. The peculiar aspect of your own probable portraits will still be characteristic of you and no other. The abilities, strengths, and variants that you may want to actualize are already latent in your terms and at your disposal. Suppose that you are unhealthy and desire health. If you understand the nature of probabilities, you will not need to pretend to ignore your present situation. You will recognize it instead as a probable reality that you have physically materialized. Taking that for granted, you will then begin the process necessary to bring a different probability into physical experience. And if anyone's wondering, yes, that is what I am attempting to do ongoingly, I suppose, with my state of stressed health tonight, I guess. 10:19. You will do this by concentrating upon what you want, but feeling no conflict between that and what you have, because one will not contradict the other. Each will be seen as a reflection of belief in daily life. As it took some time to build up your present image with its unhealthy aspects, so it may take time to change that picture. But underlined concentration upon the present unhealthy situation will only prolong it. Period. Each condition is as real or unreal as the other. Which world, you have your choice, broadly, within certain frameworks that you have chosen as a part of your creaturehood. The past as you think of it, and the subconscious, again as you think of it, have little to do with your present experience outside of your beliefs about them. The past contains for each of you some moments of joy, strength, creativity, and splendor, as well as episodes of unhappiness, despair, perhaps, turmoil, and cruelty. Your present convictions will act like a magnet, activating all such past issues, happy or sad. You will choose from your previous experience underlined all of those events that reinforce your conscious beliefs, and so ignore those that do not. The latter may even seem to be non-existent. As mentioned in this book, in chapter 4, for instance, the emerging memories will then turn on the body mechanisms, merging past and present in some kind of harmonious picture. This means that the pieces will fit together whether they are joyful or not. This joining of the past and present in that context predisposes you to similar future events, for you have geared yourself for them. Change now quite practically alters both the past and the future. For you, because of your neurological organization, The present is obviously the only point from which past and future underlined can be changed, or when action becomes affected. I am not speaking symbolically. In the most intimate of terms, your past and future underlined are modified by your present reactions. Alterations occur within the body. Circuits within the nervous system are changed, and energies that you do not understand seek out new connections on much deeper levels, far beyond consciousness. Your present beliefs govern the actualization of events. Creativity and experience are being formed moment by each individual. Period and break. 1035 to 1059. Now, you must understand that your present is the point at which flesh and matter meet with the spirit. Therefore, the present is your underlined point of power in your current lifetime, as you think of it. If you assign greater force to the past, then you will feel ineffective and deny yourself your own energy. For an exercise, sit with your eyes wide open, looking about you, and realize that this moment represents the point of your power, through which you can affect both past and future events. The present scene before you, with its intimate physical experience, is the result of action in underlined other such presence. Do not be intimidated, therefore, by the past or the future. There is no need at all for undesirable aspects of your contemporary reality to be projected into the future, underlined unless you use the power of the present to do so. If you learn to get hold of this feeling of power now, you can use it most effectively to alter your life situation in whatever way you choose, again, within those limitations set by your creaturehood. If you were born without a limb, for example, your power in the present cannot automatically regenerate it in underlined this life, although in other systems of reality you do possess that limb. Parentheses, see Seth's preface, as well as the 615th session in Chapter 2. Exterior conditions can always be changed if you understand the principles of which I am speaking. Diseases can be eliminated, even those that seem fatal, but only if the beliefs behind them are erased or altered enough so that their specific focusing effect upon the body is sufficiently released. The present, as you think of it, and in practical working terms, is that point at which you select your physical experience from all those events that underlined could be materialized. Your physical circumstances change automatically as your beliefs do. As your knowledge grows, so your experience becomes more fulfilling. This does not underlined necessarily mean that it evens out in any way, or that there are not peaks and valleys. Each aspiration presupposes the admission of a lack. Each challenge presupposes a barrier to be overcome. The more adventurous will often choose greater challenges, and so in their minds the contrast between what they want to achieve and their present status can seem to be impossible. In each case, however, the underlined point of power is the present, and from that moment you choose which you and which world. The experience of a country is the cumulative result of the choice of each individual in it. So as you choose your own circumstances, you affect each other person within your country and your world. Pause at 11:15. In many quote-unquote native cultures, an individual is not considered in terms of his age at all, and the numbering of years is regarded as insignificant. In fact, a man may not know his age as you think of it. It would do you all good, young, middle-aged, and old alike, to forget the number of your years, because in your culture so many beliefs are limiting in those ways. Youth is denied its wisdom and old age is denied its joy. To underlined pretend to ignore your age, to act young because you fear your age, is no answer. See the 644th session in Chapter 11. In your terms, your point of reality and power is, once more, in your current experience. A realization of this would allow you at any age to draw upon qualities and knowledge that quote-unquote existed in your past or quote-unquote will exist in your future. Your ages are probable, brackets, simultaneous. Although time does not basically exist as you quote-unquote know it, you are neurologically forced to perceive your life as a series of passing moments. As creatures, you are born young and grow older. Yet the animals, as creatures, are not as limited in their experience in that regard. They have no beliefs in old age that automatically shut down their abilities. So left alone, while they do physically die, as all creatures must in underlined those terms, they do not deteriorate in the same way. You do not understand the communications between yourselves and pets, for example, where in their own underlined way, they interpret and react to your beliefs. Footnote. See the 639th session in Chapter 10 for material on the life and death of our cat, Rooney. Seth mentioned probabilities in connection with Rooney, too. End of footnote. They mirror your ideas, then, and so become vulnerable as they would not be in their natural circumstances. In greater terms, their relationship with you, underlined, is natural, of course, but their innate realization that the creature's point of power is in the present is to some degree undermined by their own receptivity and translation of your beliefs. A young kitten is treated differently than an older one. The cat responds to such conditioning. In the same way, your own conclusions about age become fact in your experience. In line with them, if you could convince yourself that you were 10 years younger or 10 years older, then it would be faithfully reflected in your personal environment. Underlined. If you were 20, you would be able to draw upon the wisdom you imagine you would have at 30. That whole sentence is underlined, so again, it reads, if you were 20, you would be able to draw upon the wisdom you imagine you would have at 30. If you were 60, you would be able to use the physical strength you imagined was denied you now, but available then, there's no and. All of this would be physically and biologically expressed within your body as well. Which world? If you are lonely, it is because you believe in your loneliness in this present point that you acknowledge as time. From what seems to be the past, you draw only those memories that reinforce your condition, and you project those into the future. Physically, you are overwhelming your body as it responds to a state of loneliness through chemical and hormonal reactions. You are also denying your own point of action within the present. Vitamins, better food, medical attention may temporarily rejuvenate the body, but unless you change your beliefs, it will quickly become swamped again by your feelings of depression. In such a case, you must realize that you make your own loneliness and resolve to change through both thought, underlined, and action. Action is thought and physical motion, outwardly perceived. Now, that is the end of dictation, and give us a moment. I have a few words for you. 11:37. Seth rather suddenly launched into a page of data for me. It was about some limiting attitudes I had concerning painting and age. It was very perceptive, and I was somewhat surprised to realize that the ideas had been right there before me all along. The session ended at 11:45 p.m. Quote, I don't remember anything since last break, Jane said. Her delivery and manner had grown increasingly forceful and driving as the session progressed. Both of us felt relaxed but active now. I talked about going out for a beer, then speculated that it was too late. In a moment, Jane went back into trance for Seth's amused comment. I, underlined, told you to go to your establishments, parentheses, last week, but no one listened. Parentheses, quote, I heard underlined that, Jane said, laughing. Jane was much taken with the phrase point of power. She found it very evocative. After the session, she remarked several times that she wished Seth had used it in the heading for this chapter. She even discussed adding it to the heading without really intending to do so. All right, so let's see. That's the end of that session. And the next one is pretty long. So I think this is a good point to end this stream. So I don't know. I might come back after lunch. I might not. We'll just have to see how I'm feeling, basically. Apparently, I have some beliefs to work on as well, which actually I'm well aware that I do. In fact, on a personal note, since I'm all about authenticity and, people want these streams to be some impersonal thing where I just analyze the data and don't bring any of myself into it. Well, they really should look elsewhere I'm about at all. I can tell those watching quite confidently that I've identified a negative belief and I'm continually working upon it, but that basically says that I almost want to get ill at times or have health challenges at times because I believe that through getting sick, people will finally notice that I'm not okay and thus therefore care more about me. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I also have the negative belief that says if I get better, if I get fully healthy, then everyone will not only withdraw their attention from me, but not even really give a shit that I am suffering with something, basically. So basically, I have a negative belief that says if I get too healthy, then the loving, caring attention that I need as a human being will be withdrawn from me. And yeah, I think that's why I continue to see these flare-ups. But, like I said, I'm working on it. And in fact, one of the ways that you can work on such negative beliefs is to do what I did just now, which is to be authentic about them, to express them, let them be heard. Don't give into the temptation of trying to meet your needs in a manipulative or roundabout way, which is a very low vibration, by the way, and makes you a match to all kinds of unwanted things, let's say, a match to all kinds of negative things. But instead, be as direct as you can about trying to meet your needs, And so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm communicating very directly, to anyone who's watching now or ends up watching this. Yes, as a human being, I need love and caring attention. I need to know that I'm loved and cared about, basically. I do. I'm not going to fuck around about it. I'm not going to pretend like I don't. I'm not going to, hint at it or any of that BS. I'm going to say it very directly. That's how I feel. I feel, I wish I could put it into more accurate terms. There's like something else I want to say, but I can't quite delineate it at the moment. I don't know. It's not quite coming to me, but it's more along the lines of that idea. It's like, yeah, that's a need I have. That's a need everyone has. And I'm going to state that directly. So anyway, care about you no matter what. I love you. Thanks, Lumen. I love you too. And I love those who watch me. I love you guys as my viewers. Thank you so much. You feel the same way. I know, right? It's a natural, it's an inherent human need to be loved and cared about and know that you are loved and that you are cared about, that you do matter to your fellow human beings. And to pretend like that's not it, or I'm too tough for that, or I'm too whatever for that, or I'm too independent for that, you're lying to yourself, So people might as well come right out and say it, like, yes, I need love. Yes, you need love. You need to know that you're loved and included in the human species, essentially. I don't know. If I was less out of it, I could put this into much better, much clearer terms tonight. Like, I can sense there's a much better way I could explain this, but I'm sorry. I'm just, I'm not at my 100% full potential like I normally am when I stream. So we're just going to have to go with that. But anyway, again, thank you guys for being here. I may or may not come back after lunch. We'll have to see how I'm feeling. And regardless, though, I'll be back on Wednesday, 2 days from now. We'll be talking about Uranus entering Taurus. And I'll be back on Saturday as usual, tarot card analysis stream. We'll be looking at the Sun card, and back on Monday with more Seth material. And I'll try to squeeze in some live tarot readings too on one or more of those days. So thanks again, you guys. I'm going to go have lunch, and hope you have a great day or night wherever you are. See you soon.